The following was written by a former client who wished to share her story. If you were to see my Facebook page, you would probably wish that you had a life like mine. I made sure that all my photos and posts painted a picture that hid the true suffering that I had tolerated for over 5 decades. In my 12-step recovery program for codependency, I heard numerous stories about the difficulty of living with alcoholics, whether active or dry. So I accepted the abuse that went along with the hand that I was dealt. My story includes 3 marriages to alcoholics. My last marriage is an alcoholic man who is physically sober but has severe bouts of rage and anger that are directed at me. Out of my 3 marriages, his verbal assaults have affected me the most. The confusing part for me about the abuse is that, to the outside world, he is charismatic, witty, and downright charming. He started out that way with me too, when we were dating, but on the day we were married, everything changed. Sex was withheld, he controlled the money, and the most disturbing and confusing trait was that whenever I needed to discuss something that was important to me, he would often go into automatic pilot with words of anger and rage. His reactions included belittling remarks, sarcastic accusations, and demeaning name-calling, all which would reduce me to a puddle of nothingness. He blamed me for his anger, so I would try to make him happy by pleasing him, by making gourmet meals, keeping a perfect home, and being self-supporting. I even got my weight down to 102 pounds in my early 50s because I thought that my looks were the problem. The weight loss didn't help the situation at all, and I was left with trying even harder to make him happy. I made sure that my grown children and grandchildren only visited once a year since my family could feel my husband's agitation with them being in his space. I walked on eggshells, and so did my family. Christmas Eve 2019 was like no other. One of the grandchildren did something that sent my husband into a full-blown rage in front of everyone, and my daughters confronted him. His defense was that I was the one that made him angry, and if it weren't for me, he would be just fine. My family was flabbergasted at his defense and asked me if this was the way that I was treated regularly. I frankly thought that the horrible things he said about me on that Christmas Eve were minor compared to the way he normally speaks to me in a rage. After my daughters and grandchildren left our home, I had hives the diameter of an orange. These itchy welts appeared all over my body, and I felt that I was weeping through my skin. I went into a state of complete shock and deep despair. My body couldn't handle the stress of the abuse anymore. I prayed and prayed during that time, and then I heard a small, gentle voice tell me to Google the words domestic violence in Spokane, Washington. And up came YWCA in Spokane. There was a 24-hour hotline number that I could call, so I did. I have to say that I thought they would say my situation wasn't bad enough, since I wasn't being physically hit. But I heard the complete opposite of my distorted concept of domestic violence. The person on the phone gave me all the time in the world and told me that I didn't deserve to be called names and I deserved having my needs met, and most important was that his anger was not my fault. I gave my name to that person that answered that YWCA emergency call, and on Monday morning I promptly received a call from a counselor that actually gave me a name for what had been causing me suffering for over 50 years. And that name was domestic violence. Those words were hard to hear because I wanted reality to be different, but I knew that I needed help from people that understood this debilitating state that I was in. Once I wrapped my head around my life and the effect verbal abuse was having on me, I was very ready to take guidance from the YWCA's life-saving program. I have been in the YWCA's program for almost 4 months, and in all my years of trying to figure out the reason for his anger and to get him to stop hurting me emotionally, I have never had the guidance, support, understanding, security, and resources that actually are making a huge difference in my life. And believe me, I have been to dozens of family therapists, couples counseling, and programs with no avail. Today, I feel so empowered and understood. I currently participate in a YWCA Zoom domestic violence support group, which I love, and I can't wait until Tuesdays because I get to share authentically. I also hear others that give me the most precious gift, which is that I'm not alone in how domestic violence makes me feel. I have grown to love the participants as well as the counselors, beyond measure. I also have a once-a-week private counseling session with a YWCA counselor who I know was handpicked by God for me. Just today, she made suggestions for some added resources at the YWCA that may enhance my healing. I am actually beginning to see my authentic self emerge, and I also understand that I am a survivor of domestic violence trauma from childhood. No one at the YWCA forces me or anyone to make life-altering changes. They leave choices up to the individual, as all circumstances are unique. The Y's healing support and guidance works whether you are still with the person or not. I feel that at age 64, I am blossoming into the kind of woman that I always wanted to be. My focus is on my healing and the tools and support that have been offered to me at the YWCA. I take full advantage of all the resources that they have suggested to me because it is working to restore my life and dignity. I'm sharing this because my hope is that someone like me that thinks that they just need to try harder to stop verbal abuse can instead reach out for help at the YWCA like I did. I know today that my life is too valuable and precious to waste, suffering silently, and so is yours.